All right, English 242 students, welcome to week 4. Dr. Paul Mills here with you. I'm going to go over what you have to do for this week and then give you the lecture really quickly. I'm going to share my screen long enough to show you our Blackboard page, and then we'll get into the lecture after that, okay? So what you're looking at now currently is the Module 4 instructions. Of course, the readings this week, we're doing Romantics, Politics, and Revolution. You'll be reading William Blake's London and also William Blake's The Chimney Sweeper. There's two versions of this. One of them is from the Songs of Innocence, and that's on pages 127 in Volume D. And the other one is from Songs of Experience, Volume D, page 133. After that, you'll move toward actually, let's skip down a couple down here. You'll move to the biographical information for William Blake, which is covered on pages 117 through 121. You can then move to the Lord Byron biographical information, which is on 630 to 34, before reading the poems She Walks in Beauty and Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. So those are the readings for this week. You have the video lecture you're currently watching, and then, of course, the context readings that come every week. After that, any additional resources that are available to you, the YouTube video on Blake and the video on Byron as well. The assignments for the week are to do the lecture quiz, which is attached to this lecture. The discussion board post, remember you have to post before Wednesday night and reply before Sunday. The 150 word reflection. And then, of course, this week is the first time that the big assignments are due. So you've got the journal portfolio 1 that's due, and then the literary analysis 1 that's due as well. The Jaguar tutoring assignment. So you have to turn in your Jaguar tutoring assignment, which the link is down here, right here, 2 days before your literary analysis is due. So the due date for that one is a little different. You'll see that it's 2 days before the actual literary analysis is due. Looking below that, you're going to see the context for week 4 is listed there for you to read, the literary and historical context for these poems. The link for the quiz is here. The link for the discussion board assignment is here. And then down below that, the 150 word reflection. The journal or portfolio submission goes here, and the Jaguar tutoring assignment goes here. Make sure that you follow the directions here. You're going to submit your essay to the Jaguar writing portal 2 days before the final draft is due, at least 2 days. I would say more than that. They'll give you two pieces of feedback, one that's their feedback, another that's your marked up copy of your draft. You'll then upload those two files and a third one in which you summarize the most important feedback that you received and your plans for revision from the final draft, before the final draft. Below that is the link to submit that literary analysis essay number 1 with all the prompt and submission requirements here, as well as a rubric, which we use to grade the assignment. Below that are the two YouTube links for the videos. Please give me 1 second. I need to pause my recording. 1 second. Sorry about that. I had to take a phone call. Let me make sure that I'm sharing my screen again. And there we go. So again, now you're looking at the rubric here for the assignment. This is how the literary analysis essay will be graded. Below that is the two links for the two videos for William Blake and Lord Byron. So if you've got any questions about any of those things, please reach out to me. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and move directly to the lecture notes from this point. So this lecture is on William Blake and Lord Byron, Revolution, Beauty, and the Byronic Mind. The password for the quiz for this week is Byron, Byron, lowercase, all lowercase. First, I'm going to give you a comparison between William Blake and Lord Byron, what we're looking at this week. Blake was a working class visionary who lived in poverty and claimed to see angels and visions. He was a prophet-like outsider whose art was ignored for most of his lifetime. Whereas Byron was a nobleman and a celebrity, he was adored and also scandalized in equal measure. He was famous for his looks, his affairs, and his reckless lifestyle, and he created the Byronic hero, this projection of his own brooding, rebellious character that he created. The style of the two, different. Blake was simple, short, and almost childlike forms. He had like what were called songs or hymns. His language is accessible, but it's loaded with symbolism, and his engravings and his visual art often accompanied his poetry, blending words and images together. Whereas Byron used rich, sweeping descriptions and grand landscapes in a passionate tone, his poetic forms ranged from tight lyrics, like in She Walks in Beauty, to sprawling narratives, like you see in Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. His Byron's poetry was musical and dramatic and meant to impress and move the audiences. The themes of the two. Blake was all for bringing social injustice into light. He talked a lot about child labor and the problems that happen within poverty. He had this religious hypocrisy that he talked a lot about and political corruption that he brought to light. He also, one of his themes was liberation of the human spirit through the use of the imagination. And he also played with the themes of innocence versus experience, the two different ways to look at life through the eyes that are innocent and through eyes that are experienced with life's problems, troubles, trials, tribulations, and so on. Byron, on the other end, the themes there were beauty and desire, and those contrasts between light and dark, or calm and passion. He also used the theme of alienation and exile and the emptiness of worldly pleasures, and personal delusionment that was transformed into art was one of the things that he used as a theme as well. And lastly, for a theme for Byron, the search for meaning through history, memory, and nature. The purpose that these two wrote, Blake wrote to awaken society from spiritual blindness. His poetry is like a call to justice. There's compassion, there's imagination. He wanted readers to see beyond the mind-forged manacles, to use a term from one of the poems, London, to resist oppression. Whereas Byron wanted to dramatize the self, or his own struggles, his loves, his travels, discontent. His poetry sought beauty, but also expressed a restless quiet for truth and for fulfillment. Byron's works embodied the romantic fascination with the individual emotion and also with rebellion. Some key takeaways. Blake represents Romanticism's prophetic, visionary side that critiques society and reaches towards spiritual renewal, where Byron represents Romanticism's personal, passionate side, turning inner conflict and dramatic life into art. But together, they show the range of Romanticism, from fighting injustice to wrestling with beauty, desire, and despair. So first, a little information about William Blake. He was a poet, a painter, and a visionary. He was born in London to a working class family. He showed artistic talent at an early age and was apprenticed to an engraver. He later studied at the Royal Academy of Art, but found its focus too traditional for his radical imagination. Much of his life was spent in poverty, and his poverty remained largely unrecognized until, his poetry remained unrecognized until after a time after his death. So people didn't know about him until after he was gone. Blake claimed to experience visions throughout his life. He saw angels in trees. He had prophetic dreams. He had spiritual encounters. And those visions shaped his poetry, which often reads like a blend of biblical prophecy and radical social critique. Blake did see imagination not just as a tool for writing, but also as a sacred force that could liberate the human soul, specifically from tyranny. His most famous works include songs of innocence and experience, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and Jerusalem. Today, Blake is recognized as one of the most original and influential voices in English literature. He was a prophet-like poet whose work bridges romanticism, mysticism, and social injustice or social justice. So this week, the content, Blake's poem London and the Chimney Sweeper. Blake's Songs of Innocence and of Experience presents two contrasting views of the world. The poems in Song of Innocence often sound like children's verse. They're gentle, they're musical, they're trusting, while those in Songs of Experience expose the corruption and the suffering that was hidden beneath the innocence. In Blake's London and the Chimney Sweeper, to be exact, this is the one from Innocence. Just going to go through the lines and paraphrase each quatrain. The first three lines: when my mother died, I was very young, as my mother sold me, while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, weep, weep. A paraphrase of that is: my mother died, and my father sold me into chimney sweeping when I was too young to even say sweep properly. And so your chimneys I sweep, and in soot I sleep. A paraphrase of that is: my life is spent sweeping chimneys and sleeping in filth. So I want you to think about going through and paraphrasing what each one of these lines means so that you can later kind of dig into the text itself. Later, the chimney sweeper from experience sounds a little like a little black thing among the snow, crying, weep, weep, in notes of woe. And this is the older person now. I see a tiny child, dark with soot, crying in the snow. Where are thy father and mother? Say, they are both gone up to the church to pray. The paraphrase of this is: when asked about his parents, the child explains that they've gone to church, pretending that they're good people, but they've put their child to work. The reason that children were used for chimney sweepers is that they could easily climb up into a chimney and clean it out, whereas an adult would have that problem. And so what Blake's kind of pointing out is the hypocrisy here. At the time Blake was writing, many children, sometimes as young as 6, were forced into chimney sweeping, one of the dirtiest and most dangerous jobs of the Industrial Revolution. In the Innocence version, the young speaker recounts a dream where angels promise the suffering sweeps eternal joy if they obey and endure. On the surface, the dream is hopeful, but Blake's irony is clear. Religion is being used to pacify the oppressed, teaching them to accept misery now in exchange for promised happiness later. In the Experience version, the tone is far more bitter. The chimney sweeper accuses parents and church leaders and also society of this hypocrisy that I refer to. Adults pretend to mourn children's suffering while directly benefiting from their labor. Their child's voice becomes an indictment of the entire social system, a piercing cry, weep, 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 that innocence has been in fact betrayed. So in London, you have someone who kind of walks through the streets of London. The first stanza: they walk through the streets, they're restricted, they're controlled streets, and even the river seems to be owned or chartered. They see suffering on every face that they see. Everywhere they go, men crying out, children weeping, voices that are filled with restrictions, the invisible chains of thought and oppression that bind people together. In London, Blake takes readers on a grim walk through the streets of the city, and everywhere he looks, he sees marks of weakness, marks of woe. The poem catalogs the suffering of ordinary people. You see children crying, soldiers bleeding, and harlots, prostitutes, cursing. Blake introduces the phrase mind-forged manacles, to describe how people are trapped not only by external laws or poverty, but by the way society controls their thoughts, their beliefs, their hopes. The poem ends with a haunting image of marriage blighted by disease, suggesting that even love is poisoned in this world of oppression. In other words, the men go out to be with prostitutes, they give them infection, they bring that home to their marriage, and the cycle continues. Blake's poems are short and simple on the surface, but every line carries layered meanings, spiritual, political, and emotional, and he uses poetry to awaken readers to injustice. Again, the password for this quiz is Byron. Moving on to Byron, George Gordon, Lord Byron, was born into a noble but troubled family, inherited his title at the age of 10. He was educated at Harrow and Cambridge, and he quickly gained fame and notoriety both for his poetry and also his personal life. He was handsome, brilliant, and scandalous. Byron was a celebrity in his own time and had numerous affairs. His life was spent recklessly, and eventually he left England under a cloud of gossip. Byron traveled widely through Europe and the Near East, and his experience became the basis for his long narrative poem, Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. He later joined the fight for Greek independence from the Ottoman Empire and died in Greece at the age of 36 from fever, still a national hero there to this day. Byron's most known works are Don Juan, Manfred, and She Walks in Beauty. He left behind not just poems, but a literary archetype, this Byronic hero, this charismatic, flawed, mysterious figure who defies authority, suffers inwardly, and walks the edge between greatness and ruin. In She Walks in Beauty, we have a short lyric poem that captures Byron's admiration for a woman's beauty. Unlike many romantic poets who focus solely on physical features, Byron emphasizes the harmony between her appearance and the inner calm that she displays. The imagery contrasts light and dark, night and day, suggesting that true beauty exists in balance. Byron's tone is reverent and almost worshipful. He portrays the female figure as graceful, innocent, and serene, and the poem has a musical rhythm and controlled structure that highlight Byron's ability to shift from his usual rebellious energy into something tender and contemplative. In Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, the long narrative poem follows Harold, who's a disillusioned young nobleman who wanders across Europe, seeking an escape from his boredom and from his guilt. In the passages we read, Harold gazes on ancient ruins and grand landscapes. Instead of feeling inspired, he reflects on the fleetingness of human achievement and the emptiness of worldly pleasures. Harold is a clear stand-in for Byron himself. He's alienated, he's restless, and he's burdened by fame and also scandal. The poem has a melancholy tone and vivid scenery, and philosophical musings, all which helped to define the Byronic hero type, someone who's brooding, charismatic, and perpetually dissatisfied. She Walks in Beauty and Childe Harold's Pilgrimage demonstrate two sides of Byron's romanticism. One side is lyrical and controlled, which celebrates beauty and harmony, and the other is restless and stormy, which confronts his alienation, history, and his despair. Together, they show how Byron turned his personal experiences, his lovers, his scandals, and his travels into poetry that blended the personal with the universal. All right, that's all I have for you today. Thank you much for your time, and good luck in week 4.